love how quietly Grant and Clara and Cadence are waiting. I like how Liam picked a really good spot for his chair where he won't get distracted by anything behind him. And I'm hoping Jackson will scoot up next to Liam so he's not distracted by those things. I am wondering why my two friends are sitting so close to the other two friends. Why don't you scoot back where you guys go? Awesome. Okay, friends. Yesterday you read this book, A Cheer for My Mother, with Miss Dreesen. Now, we had a couple problems with some listening during that, but I am hoping that today we'll be able to talk about it so that all of us can understand what was happening in the story. So to start a conversation, just like we always do, what were you thinking about when you listened to that story? And remember, we're going to start the conversation, and then you're just going to be able to respond to what each other is saying. So Clara, why don't you get us started? Who can respond to what Claire is thinking about that? Could you hear her?
I couldn't.
Can you say it a little louder?
So, at the beginning of the story, they told us that their house got on fire, and at the end of the story, their house actually went on fire.
Go ahead, Thatcher, just respond to her.
So I called a chair for my mother because they did buy a chair because they were saving up, and Miss Dreesen asked us if we were saving up for anything because this girl really wanted a chair because they didn't have really anything in their house to sit on.
Tell me more about that. Why didn't they have something to sit on?
Because they didn't have a lot of money and stuff.
How could you tell? Who can respond to that? How could you tell that they didn't have a lot of money? Jackson, what are you thinking?
Because they, in the pictures of the book, their clothes, like in the book, their clothes was like really dirty.
Okay.
And like in the beginning of the story, their house already went on fire, so a lot of stuff burned down. But so they saved up for the money, and then they went to buy another chair, but right when they got back to their house was on fire again. Yeah.
So I think we need to clarify a little bit of the story, because I wondered if you guys, go ahead Xander, I'll take your comment and then I'm, okay. So let's go back to clarifying this bit about the fire, because I thought that might confuse you when you were reading, and I had thought maybe you would have talked about it when it happened as you were reading, but let's just clarify, there was a fire. Something really interesting about this Chair for My Mother story, it starts out with the little girl, she's telling it from her perspective. She's telling us about how they're saving for a chair. And she tells us that they live in this house her mom brought home. Here's mom, there's grandma, there's the little girl. How she brought home this jar that they would save for. But then something happens back here, friends. And so then she says, that's the reason they're doing it is because our old chairs burned up. There was a big fire in our other house. And then, I'm going to pick this up, and then the little girl starts to tell you the story of what happened a while ago. So this is like a story in a story. So she's telling the story of getting the chair, but then she's explaining why they need the chairs, Eli. And so this whole part of the story is something that already happened, and it's called a flashback. A flashback is when the author, kind of like that, Brenton, if you flash back to a memory that you had. It's not happening right now in the story. Right now in the story, they're saving for the chair. But this whole part is a flashback. And then she says right here, that was last year. So a year ago, her house got on fire, and that's why everything burned. and now they need a chair. So the house only burned one time. They're in a new apartment. So good job. We needed to clarify a little bit of that. All right, so we know what happened in the story. So I'm wondering, when you were listening to this story about this family who was saving up their money and you thought they didn't maybe have a lot of money, what words would you use to describe the family? What were you thinking about when you were thinking about this family? Go ahead, Xander.
You're kind of thinking of clothes.
Say that again.
You're kind of thinking that they didn't have any money in their clothes.
They were broke. I love that you used that word. And then you clarified it. They didn't have much money. You want to piggyback off that, Nora? Well, you can too.
Another word that I might have used
Is what?
poor.
Poor.
That's what I was.
Elliot, you said you.
That was what I was.
Oh, so a lot of friends agree that this family doesn't have much money. What are you thinking, Quinn?
I think, like, when she said, like, she doesn't have much money and she's saving, I'm like, we can help.
Oh. Did anybody help in the story? Did you hear any part of the story about helping?
I heard that in, like, when their house burnt down, their neighbors came over and gave them lots of goodies and other things.
Yeah.
Yeah?
So there were some helpers, weren't there? Go ahead, don't remember, we're gonna try not to raise our hand, just respond, Miss Layla. Go ahead.
So they live in, like, a really old house. There's, like, what unit and door said they from school.
So if you have to think of, so we know they don't have money, they're broke and poor, but did they let that get them down?
No.
So what word might you use to describe, like, I'm trying to think like who they are inside. What do you think? Remember, you don't have to raise your hand.
Strong, maybe?
Strong, continue, tell us more about that, Quinn.
Like, it sounds like she has no money, but she just acts like it's fine when she doesn't need it.
So what kind of strong are you talking about?
Like, tough.
Like what? Like tough on the inside, not strong muscles, but like tough on the inside? Second graders, do we know this word resilient?
Yes, I know.
Go ahead, Thatcher.
I saw it on one of the other classrooms in Miss Iverson. I saw that it said we are resilient.
Ah, so if I said what?
And I was like, I wonder what that means.
Ah. So now, if I told you it means what Quinn just said, then what were you thinking resilient might mean?
I thought that it means like something else than strong. Having something else.
You thought it was something different than that. I heard somebody over here, Graham.
We never give up.
You never give
Yeah,
up.
that's what I said.
That's what you said too, yeah. So we might say they're tough. We might say they're resilient. Do you think you would describe them as hardworking?
Yeah.
How did the author let you know they were hardworking?